Hi everybody, and welcome to another stroke analysis. This one is a special one. It's a free one. If you go to my website, meikebabel.com, and subscribe to my newsletter, one player will win a free stroke analysis every month. And Vishal was the lucky winner in July. So go to my website, meikebabel.com, subscribe, and you could be in the running for August. So Vishal in his email to me said that he would like to develop a flatter serve, and he's got a lot of spin on the ball, a lot of slice, and he wants to just flatten that out. So that's what I'm going to look at. If you like this video, let me know in the comments. If you have any ideas of videos that you would like to see in the future, please also let me know in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, it would be awesome if you could subscribe to my channel now so that I get to my first 1,000 viewers a little quicker. So let's get going here with the stroke analysis. Let's get going with Vishal's serve. So what I want to do first is just run through your serve, just hit all the major stages, and then I think I see 2 or 3 minor fixes that should help you develop a more flat serve or a flatter serve, and we will address them. But first I want to point out a couple of things that you're doing really, really well. So the first thing is your grip. So on that, I'm having a little bit of a hard time seeing that from here. You definitely have a continental grip, if not even a little bit over to an Eastern backhand grip. And that's what I'm thinking right here. I'm seeing that it looks fairly extreme as a continental grip. And that could, of course, have something to do that you're getting more slice on the serves. So that is something that you have to really check yourself from this perspective, and being far away, I can't really see it as clearly, but I think it's definitely a continental grip, if maybe even a more extreme or more aggressive continental grip. So what I like is the toss arm here is straight, and it seems to be pointing to the right net post, so there it's not a straight on ball release. That's exactly what we want. And you release the ball here between eye level and the top of your head. So that's ideal. That's perfect. The next stage that we want to get into is the load. So this is where you're loading the most. You have a platform stance. There's no really one that I would choose over the other. So that is a personal preference. The ball toss is good, even for if you deliberately wanted to hit a slice serve, because a slice serve and a flat serve theoretically very, very much have the same ball toss. And you see world-class players, and we'll go through Novak Djokovic here in a minute. They don't vary their tosses too far out here for a slice, or then bring it back over to the left a little bit more for a flat serve. So that is good. Again, here we see that's a great grip. Love that full extension of your non-dominant hand. You're loading, and I'll go back into that in a minute, because I think that is where one of the first tweaks can happen a little bit. And then we go into the next stage, the so-called cocking position. So if I can go back just a smidgen here, right here. What we do see here is that your elbow is pointing to the ball. That's ideal. Your eyes are up. You're not collapsing. That's good. And the butt cap also points to the sky. So that is a really good position to be in. And then you're coming into your acceleration. And here's where we need to start looking at Novak Djokovic a little bit, because there is where one of the very tiny discrepancies are happening. So we're seeing here in the ball toss, we have the load, and I deliberately don't need the legs here really for what we need to see. So what's more important is, so you are in the cocking position right here. And this is where Novak is in the cocking position. So butt cap, eyes, and the inside of the elbow are all looking up to the sky. That's exactly where you want it. And the tip of your racket are both looking down. So that's ideal still. The slightly different difference that's going to happen here is that you're starting to rotate open more than he does. And granted, he's world class, everything, but that might also be one of the reasons, in a minute you will see, why you're coming around the ball a little bit more, or have a different racket position. I should be careful with the around the ball. So right here at contact point, he's still pretty much side on to the net. Of course, the right hip has come over and around a little bit, and so has the right shoulder. But if we were to look at him serving here from over there, we would not see the right hip as much. So when you're now coming up to contact point here in the acceleration, and you're seeing this at contact point, both of your hips and both of your shoulders, if I were standing over there, I could see both of your hips and both of your shoulder. So you're coming, then again, I'm saying this with quotation marks, around the ball a little bit more, whereas you now see the biggest difference. You see a clear, full-on flat contact point of Novak's, and we see here in a second that he's going down the tee. He's missing it. I don't mind that here, but it's definitely a flat serve because you see the seams of the ball, right? So you see the writing here, and it's definitely a flat serve. So whereas both of you were leading with the edge of the racket, so you see here the edge is head on to the ball, and you were in the same position. It's a little difficult to see here because we don't have quite as many frames in your tape. You're leading with the edge of the racket, and then you're never quite getting fully flat on to the ball. So if I can hold this right here where you're making contact and where I'm seeing Novak's, I see both sides of the rackets, edges of the rackets pointing to me, whereas I'm still seeing this side of the racket, the back side of the racket, actually pointing to us here a little bit more. So you definitely have a little bit of a different degree on your racket head face as you're making contact. And that's why you're getting slice on your ball, on your serve, and that's why Novak gets a really flat serve. So you're still behind the ball, but the major difference between a slice and a flat serve is really that it's about 4 to 6 degrees of a tilt in the racket head. It's that slight, but that is the difference there. And at your velocity with which you're hitting, and you are obviously a very good player, and obviously his racket head speed, that will make all the difference in the world. So let's look at the rest of your motion, because I really, really like your serve, Vishal. So here, what I do like also is that you're not having extensive fall out to the left. You're not falling away from the ball. That is still an acceptable angle here. We see that here with Novak. That's closer to 115, 120. Yours is still acceptable to my mind, and that's definitely not something that I'm going to mess with just on a stroke analysis here. And you're coming around. And again, this is where I'm having a little bit of an issue because we don't have as many frames. So, but let's see what it ideally would look like. And what I'm getting at is the long axis rotation. That's an internal rotation of your shoulder and the pronation of the forearm. And the result should be that the side with which you hit the ball, this side here, should be pointing out to the side. And I do believe it does. I can't quite see it 1,000%. Because we just don't have, as many frames in our technology as, a professional photographer or whoever took this has, maybe a better camera than you did at this point. But I do think you are having this at least to a really good extent. And that is also, of course, not what we're going to fix. We're going to go into the motion at earlier stages, because from your contact point on to the deceleration to the finish, which you're having beautifully here, your left arm goes back to help you balance, you follow through nicely, and that looks very much like Novak right here. You know, you have that much pop on the ball that you have the right leg kicking up. Again, this is for balance, but all of that is just a consequence basically of what you put in earlier. So now let's look at the fixes for how you can achieve a flatter serve. So one of the things that I pointed out earlier is that you're over-rotating a little bit too much. And very early on in the sequence here, you can start in a slightly different position. And I want to show you how you're going up to the ball. So this here would actually be much closer to Novak's stance. So you see that his right foot is behind his left. So if we had a clock face, let's say your left foot is here and your right foot is here. So you see that you're having in this position, you already have a little bit more of a turn of your hip. And what you do want to do to get an ideal load is to load into your back leg and into your back hip, down and back, because you want to come up and out. So you have to have the opposite action to achieve the reaction of coming out and up to the ball. So if you actually serve from this position, that would be a great start. So just experiment with that a little bit if that is super uncomfortable, but you do see here that Novak has a little bit more of a staggered stance, and that helps with that turning of the left hip. So, and then what you then see is you get into your regular serving position, and then you're pretty much almost one leg or one foot behind the other. Slightly staggered, but not quite as extremely as Novak has here. So what we then want to achieve is, and I want you to pay attention to the stripe here in your shorts. That's actually super helpful that you have these shorts on. Ideally, as you're getting into your loading position, you would want that stripe to look back a little bit more towards the left. And that would tell you that you're loading down and back, but you're basically just squatting. And again, the just squatting is in air quotations because I think this is still a really good serve. But you could help yourself a little bit more by really pushing into that back leg and coming down and back. So if I continue to move this forward, this is your the lowest part of the load, and the stripe really has not changed. If we look at that with Novak now, see that here? So here is that stripe. He also has very good teaching shorts on, so to speak. There is a turn now. It's a little harder to see, but there is more of a turn. So if you were to also look at the hip bone here, there is a turn. It's not huge. It's not, 80 degrees or something, but about 20 degrees would be ideal. And I think, for a recreational player, pro players are about between 20 and 40 degrees here. They're just turning that much more. And then you see as he's coming out here, how the hip fires and comes up and out. And he remains still pretty much side on, meaning the left shoulder and the left hip are pointing to the opponent. And as you're coming out of your load and from the cocking position, the acceleration to hitting, this is where you're fully open and Novak is still more side on. So that might be one thing that you can do, or the second, I guess, after the stance. The third one is the long axis rotation. And you're not fixing that by forcing your arm here in a different position or forcing your arm and hand to make different contact, because at that point you would force your arm into something you would have to decelerate and you would kind of do all kinds of weird things. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tape two exercises that I'm using where you can get a better feel of actually turning your thumb here, which we don't quite see, inwards a little bit more. It's a supination because, again, this is what we want the opposite reaction of, so that you're just learning and working to have a more extreme 4 to 6 degrees really only is what we need. So it's not really that extreme, but you do want to feel the difference, that you are then pronating and having that rotation of your shoulders, so that when you're making contact, your strings are fully flat behind the ball here. And we can't see that because the rotation or the tape is not quite as and we can't see the difference here as we do for Novak, that we can see the rotation of the ball, because again, we don't have enough frames on the ball. But you do see that that ball bounces and then has a slight bounce to the left, whereas Novak's is pretty much straight on out. Okay, so here are the 2 drills that I would give you. So the number one thing is you don't want to fix or try to fix anything here. That is a result of what you put in earlier. So this starts actually as you have your cocking position. And so what you really want to work on here is that you have your thumb turning in here. Right? So you have your thumb in, and then you come up and you practice turning that inside out. Right? So you have your supination here, and then your pronation up here that comes from your shoulder and your forearm. So you can just shorten that a little bit and really try to exaggerate the thumb in and down, and then come up and out here. You can just hit a couple of balls just for funsies and do that. So this is down from here, and then just working on that pronation this way. And this is how you really flatten out that serve, because the motion from a slice and then hitting a flat serve, really the racket face is minimally more open, right? So on a flat serve, it's full square on, and it's 4 to 6 degrees that you have that slice. So you don't want to carve around. Definitely don't want to do that. You're just coming a little bit more this way, and at contact point, you just have your racket strings just slightly more open. And so with the second drill, you're now adding a ball into it. And this is how I actually learned a lot of pronation, a little bit more with the kick serve as well. But what you're doing is just positioning yourself right on the service line. And you see that in the back here, you see that little fence that separates our 2 courts. So what I'm trying to do is really dip down here again and then hit. And I'm trying to go towards that fence. If I'm doing this really well, I might actually hit that fence before it bounces again. So that's the second drill that you can work on. You just have that fence there as a helper, kind of like a visual help. This is where you want to go. So I hope those 2 tips help you. And as usual, please let me know in your comments how you like the whole video, and please feel free to subscribe to my channel.